political analyst and partner at Builders Movement, Stephen Olikara. He joins us now. Stephen, it's great to have you for this conversation. As you know, historically, any blame for a government shutdown, partial or full, is placed on the party in power. So are Democrats under the presumption, is it your read, that they are the party with the leverage here to see some of these changes to immigration enforcement that they want to see?
Well, first, thanks for having me. Happy Valentine's Day. It's not a happy Valentine's Day for these TSA agents and other federal workers who are now, again, going without pay. And yes, Democrats do have some leverage here because you need them in the Senate to advance a funding bill for DHS. But this partial shutdown of DHS doesn't do anything to change ICE. ICE is already funded by the big, beautiful bill, and they have some funding they can use to continue operations. Meanwhile, you have other federal workers who are totally innocent who become collateral damage in this process. And that's why I've been consistent over the last 10 years, 15 years really, saying that government shutdowns are really no place to be creating policy because you end up hurting people in the process. I think Democrats see this as a win for their base and for their activists, but it's not actually accomplishing the policy goal, which most Americans, myself, agreed on, which is ICE needs to change in many ways to be more respectable in our country.
Well, I do want to get to the meat of the arguments happening right now, but you're absolutely correct to point out that ICE will not be impacted here, but others like the Coast Guard, TSA, as Mills was reporting on there, FEMA, they are affected in all of this. So do you have concerns regarding this shutdown potentially dragging on and where blame may shift if, say, we see an incident where the full resources of FEMA are needed, but they're not available?
Yeah, well, typically with these shutdowns, you see real costs politically when ordinary Americans are directly harmed. And so in this case, it very likely could be Americans facing delays and challenges at the airports because of TSA agents being not at full capacity. At the same time, I think a better approach for Democrats here would have been to actually fund the portions of DHS that are not controversial right now, like TSA, the Coast Guard, FEMA, et cetera, and then let potentially funding lapse for ICE, which would come far into the future. But it would shift the debate to where it needs to be, which is on ICE being violent, unconstitutional, needing real reform in terms of body cameras, in terms of having judicial warrants. Those are things that actually can get bipartisan support around, probably a better training. So we don't see the kind of violence we saw in Minnesota. So I want legislators to shift to that debate as opposed to hurting people, which is what's happening right now.
Yeah, well, isolating the issue would definitely keep the impacts where they're targeted in all of this. Stephen, one major point of contention appears to be these judicial warrants. Democrats want to require federal law enforcement officials to get a warrant from a judge before entering private property. Instead, DHS is using administrative warrants, and they argue that people who are in the country illegally don't have the same rights as U.S. citizens. Does this issue alone have the ability to keep this stalemate going? Are there others that you think will keep lawmakers locking horns in all of this?
I think particularly among constitutional libertarians who are big on civil liberties, as well as a number of progressives, can find some agreement on the need for judicial warrants, which is, in my view, more constitutional than the administrative warrants that you were mentioning. But I think even aside from that, there are real areas of agreement. One for sure, that's like a layup, is body cameras. Most law enforcement around the country have body cameras, and both sides, left and right, agree on that. That alone would create a lot more accountability among ICE and CPB agents. So the fact that we're not seeing a movement on those issues that already have majority support reveal how the system is really working, which is profiting on the disagreement, on the hate, on getting your side an additional win as opposed to solving the real problem.
Yeah, and to your point, I've heard you talk about how politicians, they do often benefit from unresolved issues like immigration, because essentially this conflict fuels fundraising, polarization, rather than the compromise we were talking about. Do Democrats see coming to any resolution with Republicans as losing perhaps a key motivator for their voting base as we look ahead now to the midterms?
It's possible. I think Democrats, we'll have to see how much pain there is at the airports and other if there are natural disasters, for example, and FEMA is not at full capacity to respond. I think that ultimately, like you mentioned earlier, the party that's in power gets most of the blame because Americans think, well, they have majorities in both houses of Congress, they have the White House, but at the same time, we'll see how much airtime this story gets. I think right now it's a weekend. I think a lot of Democrats are thinking, great, we stood up to the GOP on this issue. If there's more attention on this to get the average American to realize that this shutdown is actually not solving the problem, then I think there'll be more of a political cost on the Democrats.
Right. All right, Stephen Olikara, great to have you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.